All right, so we're looking at chapter 13-1 demo. But before we go into actually looking at the code and what it's asking us to do, let's just kind of get a feel for what forms are even um, are even including here. So let's look at our code. I've got the code on the left. This is the file that you were given, and then I've got the page opened on the right. So let's just start up here at the top. So you always start with the tag open tag form. Okay. So form, you need to give it an action. What's the action? What's the page that's going to process this? In this case, it's just register underscore account.html. This is just a sample. It's not something that's really going to work. It's definitely not secure. So we're just using the method equals get. Now, the other method you most commonly will use is post. The difference between that is if I was to send this information, say I put in my password and all of this, it would be included in the URL up here after a question mark. Question mark in coding means query. So someone did a search or someone put in information, and then everything after the question mark, the query, would be part of the URL and get sent that way to wherever you tell it to. In this case, register account HTML. So the more secure way to do that is post. And then typically the action that's handling this is a PHP or some sort of script on the server side, because we don't want anything like, delicate like passwords, our name, social security, all that kind of stuff being sent over a browser where everybody can see. So the next part of this is you need to give your form a name. Remember, everything needs to have a name. That way we can identify it. Your name and your ID are the same when it comes to a form, and you'll see that as we move forward here. So field set, notice there's an open and close set of tags for that. That is everything over here in this box. So that's where you want to group like-minded fields in the same place and then give them a name. That helps the user, direct them to what this information is that you're asking. So you can see at the top, it has a legend identifying that field set of information. And then every field that someone's going to type in needs to have a label. So you start with this pair. You have a label followed by the input or the field. How are folks going to input the information? Are they going to type it into a box, a text box? Are they going to choose some check boxes? Are they going to click on radio buttons, the circles, drop downs, all kinds of different information? So you can see we constantly have this pair, a label, then an input. The label, so you have for. Now the for should be set the same as your ID. Okay, so ID is optional if you don't have if you don't rely on this client-side scripting like we're doing, but it is required when using labels and the for. So it's best to just use them. It doesn't hurt if you have both in either case, but consistency is a lot easier for, at least for me, to remember. So you have in your label, you have for equals. So what is this label that you're talking about? What is this information? Then you followed by the actual label itself that will show up on the page, and then the closing label tag. Then next, in this case for this email, and I'm looking at this one right here, this first field right here, input type equals, it's an email, so it's got certain things about it. The name is email, ID is also email, autofocus required. So that means when I click on here, this should automatically be focused, and then people ready to type in there. All right, in this case we have a break. Then next we go on to the next label is the password. So label for equals password, then what the actual label is, then an input is a type password. So it has certain types with it, because password has certain attributes that go along with it. Name and ID are also passwords. And then in this case, we've included required. Now the required, we can say what we want that to be. So the required placeholder is going to be at least 6 letters or numbers. And you'll see that that's what showed up in there. Okay, and then you need to give that a title. Must be at least 6 alphanumeric characters. We have a break, and then we go down to the last one in this field set is verify. So we call it for equals verify. Then we use whatever the label is, verify password. Okay, so input type, password, name and ID are the same as verify and as the for in this case, and then that is our basic idea of what's happening. Let's jump down to membership information because that's a little bit different down here. So we're going to pass over the field set for member information right here. And we're going to jump down to the third field set here, membership information. All right, so when we get to the select, when we're talking about the membership type, you'll notice on the form that it is a drop down. So if I click on this, I have 3 choices. So back over here, I've given this a name of membership type, ID membership type, and then I have the different options. And then the value is coded right next to it, and you've got a closing option. So that's a little different, but you'll see for each of these, it starts with select. So select is what groups those together. So you should see, some kind of logic going on here. You have the starting date, and this, as soon as you put, as soon as you put for here label input, label's pretty standard. Input here type date. That's where you can get this calendar option to choose from. So like I said, type, when you specify a certain type, then there's different attributes that go along with it. And then next we have a label for tickets for guests. And in this case, the input type is a number. And so with that, you have to signify what are the values for those. So the value equals 2. So that's what shows up as the default. And then you can set a minimum and a maximum. And then you have to give it a placeholder name, so from 1 to 4. So notice if I click on there, I can go from 1 to 4, up or down, and I could choose. I can also type in there if I wanted to. All right, and then lastly, we have our last field set is for our buttons. And so we have 2 primary used buttons, submit, reset. You can see here that we don't have a label, we just have the buttons. So in this case, in this demonstration, there's a non-breaking space right there, just basically a blank space. And then we've got the input type is submit. Okay, so we have the type of the button, the ID for the button, and then the value is what shows up on the button. So you'll notice on the second one, the type is reset. And again, submit, reset have certain attributes and actions associated with it. The ID is reset. The value is, instead of just reset, we set reset fields. So you could put submit form, submit your inquiry, whatever you want to call it, you just change the value. Okay, and then you can see that we've got the closing form tag right there. So as with all our tags, it just wraps around whatever the information is in there. Notice the indentation, so it's very easy to see where you're at, things that you need to change, and so forth. In the next video, we'll actually go through the demo. Thank you.